Hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places, which is me, Toby Hadoke, being cheerful and upbeat about a Doctor Who story that has been selected for me by a friend who's going to choose in secret their favourite things about each episode, and I have to guess what those favourite things are as I commentate along.
Hello, I'm Martin Geraghty and I'm one of the long-standing artists on the Doctor Who magazine comic strip, and more recently a member of the animation team on the Missing Episodes productions. Toby has very kindly asked me to contribute to his podcast, and the story I've chosen is The Horror of Fang from 1977.
Well, hello everybody. It's the thoroughly enjoyable... Spoiler alert, sorry, but if you've listened to the first two parts of this, you'll know that it's so far been the thoroughly enjoyable, and will continue to be the thoroughly enjoyable Horror of Fang Rock, Episode 3. It's Advocate Martin Geraghty, who has worked on Doctor Who comic strips, Doctor Who animations, and also lent me his priceless copy of Nigel Neal's Tomato Cane. I'm fresh from doing a reading of a story, The Pond, from Tomato Cane at the Manchester Festival of Fabulous Films, and also from launching the Season 2 box set in the form of The Time Meddler and a little on-stage interview from me and others, Tyler Butterworth, Paul Venezes, Andrew Stocker, Peter Purvis, Pete McTighe. It was the first of the BFIs I went to, and it was really, really good fun and enjoyable, and a reminder of what a lovely bunch of people make up Doctor Who fandom. And I saw loads of people there, some of them just across the room, and some I got to speak to, people I hadn't spoken to in the flesh for a good 3 years or so, and I could have stayed there for a whole extra day. So it's with that in mind. Now, this is all topical for patrons because these virtually go live. Non-patrons, this happened about 6 months ago. Now, that's not to rub it in or anything like that. It's just to illustrate, because I always do it at the end, and I know not everybody listens after the credits. This is to illustrate that patrons get these podcasts about 6 months early. So if you've done a marathon of these and are deciding, I've caught up, there are, and you're not a patron and you're on, iTunes or one of those, there's quite a hefty stack of episodes in Patronville, which is very cheap to access. But if you're a patron, I'm preaching to the converted, so I'm sorry about that. Right, listen up. Everybody, patrons, non-patrons, I love you all, and it's nice to be doing this, isn't it? It's nice as I record this, the winter nights are drawing in, it's the day after Halloween. What more appropriate story than the Killfest that is, and a reminder, reminds me very much of the sort of horror films, all the late night horror films that I seem to remember from when I was a kid, with the John Carpenter ones, like The Thing and The Fog, which of course has part of it is set in a lighthouse with Adrienne Barbeau as a DJ, isn't she, in a lighthouse? So slightly different setup, but a foggy night and a lighthouse, and is enough to evoke that Carpenter classic. Which and they have the great thing of having a group of characters cut off, and who then get bits cut off. People get picked off, and that's my kind of thing, hoping that person survives, or upset that person doesn't. I mean, even non horror and sci-fi, like the Poseidon Adventure, I love all of that stuff. Throw a group of characters together, have them in jeopardy, pick them off one by one. You feel each individual death if it's done properly, and you're pleased for the survivors. At the end, that's all I need. I don't need plot twists and convolutedness and blah de blah. I mean, all that stuff's good, but that's bread and butter for me. So, then you throw in Paddy Russell, Terence Dix's writing, Tom Baker, Louise Jameson in this cast, and it's bread and butter with quite a lot of lovely jam and peanut butter and Coke. I'll leave you to decide which one. Let's say sprinkled, you'll know exactly which one. Right. Why did I say that as if I was somebody that's taken loads of Coke? Because I haven't, but did I come across like I was like I was what? Who cares? Right, stop talking about. This is a family podcast of a child-friendly television show in which loads of people are about to die, but crucially, not take drugs because drugs are bad. So let's crack on with episode 3 of Horror of Fang Rock. I'm going to press watch from the beginning on BritBox. You may be watching on DVD. You won't be watching on Blu-ray at the time I record this. So 3, 2, 1. Right, I had a few false starts there, so sorry if... well, you won't notice. I'll hopefully have edited it brilliantly. And now I've drawn attention to it. So it could have been a seamless transition, but that's just... BritBox decided to behave slightly strangely. So here we are. I'm sure... I wonder if my brothers and sisters told me I watched this one. I have an inkling it was one I maybe should have watched when I was a kid, but I don't remember watching as a kid. I do remember The Invisible Enemy. So that's interesting because I think of it as one that predates my watching experience because I have no memory of watching it as a kid. And yet, the episode broadcast 2 weeks after this one. But it was the repeat of Invisible Enemy that was my earliest memory. But I've just had an inkling of my brothers going, "Oh no, you were around when we watched Horror of Fang Rock." But if I was, I don't remember it. Invisible Enemy is my earliest memory. And so I think of this one as being one from before my time, especially as I got the book so early in my book buying. But this is all good, and the characters all look great. As BBC can do costume drama, so all of that stuff they can do in their sleep. Although, of course, because this was Birmingham, I think there was a few members of the crew that it would be their first and only time working on the show. I think there was a sound guy was it Dave Bournemouth that Paul Venezes knew, who sadly no longer with us, who I think had done something on the moon base when he'd been stationed in London, but largely worked in Birmingham because Paul Venezes, who is BBC producer, missing episode hunter extraordinaire, and BBC DVD commentary producer and stuff, lovely fella Paul. He knows all the Birmingham lot because he's based in Birmingham, and he always used to mention Dave Bournemouth because he did this, and I think it was I think a lot of the guys that Paul knew or knows have one Doctor Who connection, and it's Horror of Fang Rock because this was done at Pebble Mill. I like the fact that all the class stuff is completely knocked out of the park. Now that this lighthouse is under attack, and by morning we might all be dead. I think Annette Woolett, whose name is now I think Lucy Maxwell. I've never had the pleasure, but she was one we couldn't find for a while. But then she turned up. She works for a charity, I think, in Swansea. But because I'd got Rio Fanning for Who's Round, here he is, lovely actor. Told terrible stories of going to a sort of Catholic school and getting discipline whacked into him on his bare hands. He'd never have gotten any of that. But he's in one of the first 3 episodes of Z-Cars. He's in one of the Z-Cars episodes that's on the VHS of Z-Cars that they did. I remember the Z-Cars cast were on Wogan to launch a VHS of the first 3 Z-Cars episodes. Primetime telly, venerable actors launching archive telly on VHS. You wouldn't get that now, would you? Maybe you would. I don't watch the one show very often, but even if they did, they laughed at it. I seem to recall they laughed at Web of Fear rather than treating with the reverence it deserved. But there we go. People who make modern factual television don't seem to be aware that the people that came before them paved the way for what they do now, and if you're doing the one show, probably don't laugh at a piece of children's drama that is endured for 60 years and people still remember and want to buy. Anyway, I'm preaching to the converted, and this is supposed to be positive. And I was talking about Rio Fanning, who's in one of the early episodes of Z-Cars. He popped up in a Sergeant Cork as well. He pops up in an awful lot. Now then, I suppose the Alan Rowe tries to make that work, and it doesn't quite. Where he's supposed to look down first and then notice the guy behind him who's practically next to him, but that's okay. Because I love Colonel Skinsale, it's one of my favourite performances. I actually think, Annette Woolett, I think has a hard job because she has to scream and lose it quite a lot. But it's a joke. It's in the text. It's in the character that actually they find her really annoying. And of course, and I know this. I play in the Jago and Lightfoot I was in. I played an annoying character, and people said, "God, I found him really annoying." I was like, "Well, yeah, he was supposed to be annoying, but I can understand why you might go, oh, Toby's really annoying in that, but I'm not annoying. The character I was playing, I was annoying, and I wouldn't have done the right job if he hadn't been annoying." But it's a bit like, is it Jeremy Fitz-Oliver in the Pertwee Radios? He is really annoying though, and Adric's annoying, and Brendan's annoying, and I'm not sure annoying characters are particularly helpful to an actor. But actually, I think in the case of Adelaide, it's done very well because I think she plays her spot on, and the way that the others react is occasionally sardonic. Leela gets quite tired of her, but actually is quite gentle with her, and also Adelaide is scared but also patronising. It's clever. It works, and I think you have to give the actress credit, and also a certain amount of sympathy for going, you're playing the awful one, so put your ego to one side. And she's not, and she doesn't take you out of the drama and make you go, God, I'm not enjoying watching this anymore, because she's been deliberately placed in it in that way. No, the issue, I guess, is we've just had, the doctor saying, I think the creature killed Reuben, and Harker's going, no, I saw him. And you have Colin Douglas doing very well there, looking sort of slightly stunned and going, leave me be. Now, I don't think I ever watched this without knowing that it was a shape-changing alien. So it's very difficult for me to judge whether, because I love the cliffhanger to this episode, but is it a cliffhanger that works because does it work because it's just so well done and well acted and nicely written? I love a girl's tied to him like a piece of string. And this, I love this scene because Skinsale, who has his own issues in terms of whether he's a good person or not, is kind of the one we're rooting for amongst this bunch, because she's awful and Lord Palmerdale's a git, horrible swine, and we kind of like Skinsale because he's funny and because he conducts himself like a gentleman. It's actually part of the trick. It's quite clever because Skinsale represents a lot of things that aren't okay. And it's a very, dare I say it, very British thing of we kind of respond to people. It sort of explains Jacob Rees-Mogg in a way, who would asset strip this country and sell it for tuppence halfpenny to his mates who don't pay tax in this country. But would do it by quoting Latin and wearing a double-breasted suit and looking like copyright somebody else or Haunted Pencil. Deporting himself with manners and with excellent diction and sort of oldie worldy sort of etiquette, and we like that. We do respond to that. Weirdly, we're a country that has class etched into so many of its interactions and contradictions, and I find I'm drawn to people, in inverted commas, talking properly, and a sort of old-fashionedness that makes me feel comfortable, nostalgic for a time when things were proper. And of course, things weren't proper. We did terrible things in the past, and all these sort of people like Skinsale were terrible hypocrites who hid behind their honour as an excuse to do terrible, terrible things. And yet, I really like Colonel Skinsale, and I think he's charming and funny. And there's a nice subplot here with the money, where, of course, poor old Vince, bless him, doesn't want to do anything bad, but is also, this is the amount of money. This amount of money could be life-changing from. But of course, he later burns it. So actually, it's a terrible waste. He's because that will never. And it almost, doesn't it, within the sort of confines of the story, it sort of signs his death warrant, because he's tempted, albeit very, very briefly, to the dark side. Although actually, him taking the money has nothing to do with his death, not like Skinsale, who dies scrabbling for diamonds. But it does kind of dirty all of the characters, and I like that. I think again that's just clever writing. It's not just doing stuff for plot. It's having a sort of thematic thing going on with it. But listen, I was talking about the shape changing. I don't think I ever watched this without knowing, and it's reminiscent. I've mentioned the Thing when I mentioned the fog, but I didn't elaborate. And of course, the Thing is about people in a confined base, and the alien could be any one of us. And I love that. Who Goes There is the original title, isn't it? The sort of paranoia of it's him when they do the blood bit. And this is sort of Doctor Who's equivalent, and it does it well. But does anybody watching think that Ruben is alive at this point? I honestly don't know. And of course, when they cut to him glowing in his bedroom, I think you're really going, oh no, that's the monster. But there are attempts to disguise, because I guess we think Ruben's in his room at this point, do we? Or do we know, no, he's the alien, he's gone into his bedroom and he's changed and he's crawled out and is now going to kill Lord Palmerdale. That's a good shot, because the way that it's shot, and without you hearing the conversation, is suggests the sort of eavesdropping that he's doing. And the fog is coming in and you can see the green light. And Palmerdale's had it coming, because he's such an awful person. And that fog is nicely in. And it's a good performance by Sean Caffrey. He was a good actor. And as I say, these aren't the sort of parts he normally played. So that's quite nice. But actually, it's quite good casting. I think it's quite good casting, because a lot of those people from that class did have a sort of underlying brogue. It wasn't quite as RP as I think some casting today would do it. So, I think that all works very nicely. Although he is RP, but there's just because he's an Irish actor doing RP, it does give it that slight offness that is accurate. It's good. It's deliberate. It's good. It works. And this, I think, is brilliant, because Skinsale, who we really like, has done this on purpose, and he sits there cool as a cucumber going, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And he also gets the catharsis of saying horrible things about Palmerdale, which we like. But now Skinsale, of course, he's going to do a terrible thing. He's worried about his reputation. So, which I was alluding to before. It's all about sort of surface reputation. Well, reputation, actually there's some dramas where that's seen as a good thing. I mean, in the Crucible, John Proctor says, you can have everything, but not my name, because that's who you are, and that's how these people operate. Is that your place in society, your good name is important. Now, when Proctor does it, he's fighting against the evil of the mob. And it's a good thing. Whereas, of course, when Skinsale does it, it's ego and selfishness disguised as honour. And yet we still really like him. Now, so we've seen the glowing around Ruben, but it still ties in with the beast of Fang Rock and going, one of them went mad. Has Ruben gone mad? Which means Vince has reason to worry about his safety, quite rightly, as it turns out. And this is because, they're quite mean to her. You actually feel a bit sorry for her here, because she is in mortal peril. But they haven't got time. Has he done the line about, no, it's now, the Malicious Damage Act 1861 covers lighthouses. I adore, it's just a throwaway. He doesn't even follow it up. In fact, What Nothing is, it kind of draws attention to that, which is a shame, because actually it's a beautiful line. It's a beautiful rebuke. And there's something cracking and Leela about going, he's locked in, I've got a mallet, I'm going to smash his door down. Love that. Because she does this stuff without it ever being a suggestion that she's an unthinking, bullish, purely physical creature. Leela is so intelligent and intuitive. She's just not intellectual because her education has not been that way. And I think that is very clever characterization. And that is greatly to Doctor Who's credit. And I think Leela's a brilliant character. I think Leela's an absolutely fantastic character, and they lucked out when they got Louise Jameson to play her. So, part of me goes, I wish you'd taken the money. But it just shows what a good man Vince is, I guess, that he will burn the money on principle when he's, or is he doing it to cover his tracks? No, I don't read it like that. I read it as he didn't want to take it in the first place, and now something terrible has happened. He doesn't want to. He's ashamed of his part in that process, even though he's not responsible for Palmerdale's death. But yeah, I see it as a positive with Vince. I don't see him as he's covering his tracks. I don't think he's that sort of character. A hostile alien from a distant planet. And it intends to destroy us. He can just do that dialogue like he's shelling peas. I mean, this brilliant stuff comes out of him. It fits him like a glove. Oh, Tom Baker, you're so good. I cannot find the cowardly one. I love that. that Leela is so straight in what she says, and of course that's great. That's the brilliance of the setting. Adelaide had gone upstairs to find Palmerdale, and they went, "No, he's not up there." Well, and he's not downstairs either. So this is when they realise, oh, something must have happened to him. And the Doctor's pretty unfeeling the way that he issues this news in front of Adelaide, who he knows won't be able to cope with it. And this is, I think this is Tom, the actor, being quite unkind, actually. Tom, the actor, and therefore the Doctor, being quite unkind, which I don't like as much as I do some of his other readings, because it's sort of almost making light of somebody's death. And now it earns it here because you have that, do you want to go outside and check? Oh, God, I see what this means. And so now they're finally convinced that, he believes in this deadly alien creature. Colin Douglas looks great. But I think his initial breaking of the news, when he does it sort of slightly quizzically, I can see what he's doing there, and it's him being, the alien. I also think it's Tom not massively helping his... Well, I suppose he is helping the actors because it's an appalling, the juxtaposition between his glibness and Adelaide's, terrible shock, is all part and parcel of the whole makeup of the atmosphere and the dynamics within the thing. But I think I prefer him when he's he's quite cold about the death of Marcus Scarman. He still does have a sort of depth about him. There's a seriousness to it, even with the sort of alien, the dispassionate alienness, as it were. Whereas there, he's doing a sort of gag. But I think it's what you get when you have Tom Baker. He will give surprising line readings, and certainly at this period, 9 times out of 10, they work really, really well. And I quite like something to me as a lad, as a kid, as all of this stuff where the 3 chaps go, right, well, we better go out and have a look. Feels terribly brave. They don't even question that they're going to do it. And I thought, gosh, is that what you do when you're grown up and brave and all of that? And it's the stuff of sort of adventure. And of course, Skinsale has seen death before, because for all of his duplicitousness, he's a man who's seen action and has probably been very brave in it. And of course, yes, these different dynamics throw out a suggestion. Yes, I like the way she goes enough that she's not being cruel to her. She's just, come on. There's a slight gentleness with the tiredness about her. But Tom Baker is brilliant here, and it's a lovely piece of writing that, Skinsale, who we like, has gone, no, I didn't kill him because I was down here. What were you doing down here? Sabotage on the radio? And to protect your honour, you've put all our lives in danger. And yet, Skinsale is still not like the baddie. You'd be sadder if Skinsale died than Lord Palmerdale, because Lord Palmerdale wasn't very nice. Harker, though, is the hero. He's the doughty working man who's entrusted by the Doctor to do the work, and oh yeah, this is the end of him. Oh, and Colin Douglas does a beautiful sort of horror grin, doesn't he? It's a lovely piece of acting, all of this. But look at that. That's glorious. Sort of, and Vince doesn't actually, because Vince dies very quickly in the next episode. So actually, Vince burning the money is pretty much his last action, apart from, saying that the foghorn doesn't work. And I like the way that Tom Baker says Harker in a minute when they realise the implications of the fact that is it called the foghorn doesn't work. But that's a great sadistic sort of alien smile, and the way that Reuben goes from sort of being impassive, walking dead man to, sadistic, bright-eyed, grimacing alien. He was dead before he hit the ground. You see, that's great writing of the sort of the lines you get during. I know it just past it, but during the Hinchcliffe era of that kind of, he was dead before he hit the ground. It just gives it drama. It gives it input. It makes you feel quite excited, even though it's horrible. In real life, it would be horrible. In drama, it's the stuff of sort of excitement and atmosphere and ominousness. Oh yeah, and look at Tom Baker, so good at being a sort of brooding person, and I love all of this stuff about the Doctor trying to work out who the alien is, because he has this vast sort of storehouse of knowledge, and I love the way that Louise is relaying that news as though she's repeating what she has been told, because she doesn't really know how the boiler works and all of that sort of stuff. That's such a clever acting choice. Of somebody, because somebody who hasn't thought about it enough would just go, oh, Vince says the boilers thing and the pressure starters right, but she doesn't really know what that means, so she's relaying it like it's been told to her, although actually the reality for Louise Jameson is it hasn't been told to her, because there's nobody at the other end. So brilliant, and this is great for the drama because they followed down. So you have the death of Harker, which is terrible because he's a great character. Nice performance from Rio Fanning, but you've got them followed down. We're building to the climax now, so you get the only person that's allowed to really lose it of the characters that are able to be party to this are Adelaide, so we get her losing it, so get her away because the drama's about to ratchet up. But these two can't lose their cool because they're our heroes. So instead what we have for the cliffhanger is not this is terrible. We have this wise old Time Lord suddenly realizing what's wrong and that he's partially responsible. And again, the way that this is written, rigor mortis, instead of saying, oh, he's been dead, rigor mortis leads us into he's been dead for hours. And then the way that Tom Baker performs this, I think, is fabulous. Even though Tom Baker saying chameleon, I've done a whole podcast about this. This is Tom Baker being naughty because, I'll talk about it next time because we have the early Shimurley as well. Because I don't want to cramp the style of that brilliantly acted cliffhanger. And damn your eyes, I was pressing the button to stop it from cutting out during the credits because I like reading the credits, and they provide a lovely backdrop to the climax of this. So unfortunately, I'm not now talking along to the closing credits and the cast because it's raining, there's something wrong with my internet, BritBox is playing up, whatever. Now it's starting episode 4. And also apologies because that episode might have slightly gone out of sync because somebody knocked on the door with a delivery just after the Doctor was told that Lord Palmerdale had fallen off the gantry, and I tried to line it up and sort of re-recorded exactly the same point. But if you're watching along with the episode, you might have gone slightly out of sync, for which I apologise. But I think most people just listen to this when they're out for a walk, or presumably while they're having open heart surgery or at the dentist's, in order to have something even more painful to distract them from the pain I'm just bestowing upon you. Anyway, I love that episode of Doctor Who. I think it's a wonderfully atmospheric story. It hadn't actually occurred to me when I started. I don't know why I'd started banging on about the fog and the thing. It must have been subconscious, because I've never really sort of thought about this echoing those Carpenter films. And we watched lots of films when I was a kid late at night. I was allowed to stay up late at night, but the ones that had the real impact on me, apart from one called The Omega Man with Charlton Heston that I watched as a kid, and was the most terrifying thing ever. And I've since watched it, and it's not that terrifying, but my goodness. And it's the one that became it's the one based on I Am Legend, isn't it? But Anthony Zerbe and those guys with their their white eyes was enough to send the chills down the back of my spine. But it was mostly the Carpenters, and as I say, the Thing, The Fog, Halloween. They're the ones that I remember being the kind of sort of slightly naughty late night horrors that we were allowed to stay up and watch. That I felt a bit growing up being able to stay up and watch. And actually, yeah, this has elements of both The Fog and The Thing. And yet I knew of this before I knew of them, because this was a very early Doctor Who on my radar. And I think I'd ruined it for myself by flicking through the book and seeing where I think I knew where most people died before I actually read the story properly. I'd see, even before the existence of spoilers, I think I spent much of my youth spoiling Doctor Who stories for me by wanting to have a general idea of of the story before getting down to the nitty gritty. I love the idea of being able to discover some of it. I'm so envious of young people, but not from any sort of curmudgeonly vibe from me or anything like that. But I would love to be a kid or a teenager who's just been introduced to Doctor Who, just fallen in love with Doctor Who, because it gets you when you're young. Imagine, having just watched, the last season or the latest episode. So yeah, say for the sake of argument, having just watched Flux as a kid and got into it and liked these characters, and gone, there's more Doctor Who, isn't there? And discovering all the, all the new Who, as it were. But then there's going to be a subsection of them. Not everybody would then go back and go further back. But imagine being the sort of kid who is, predisposed to consume it all, who then goes, what, there's a pre-series of Doctor Who that's 26 years long, and discovering stories like the horror of Fang Rock first time. And I hope because I think this stuff is more ubiquitous and there's less shame attached to it. See, I was always slightly ashamed of television that was 10, 15 years old, because it was easily mocked by my schoolmates. But I think there's enough time passed now that this stuff is, I think, understood slightly more, that, we don't make television like this anymore, but it doesn't matter, in the same way that, when I was getting embarrassed about stuff like this, you didn't get embarrassed about Casablanca and classic films in the same way, because they were venerable and part of history. Now, there will always be, that one show stuff I got annoyed about, people who sort of look back and go, here's a thing they couldn't do because it hadn't been invented yet. I'll laugh at that. But I think that's just best ignored, because it's sort of pointless. You think it's not worth saying. The fact that you think it's worth saying, and that we have whole television programs dedicated to people saying that sort of thing, I think is a sign of the cultural apocalypse that reigns on us all. But it's not actually worth bringing into the conversation, because the sheer joy is the idea that there's going to be a 10-year-old somewhere who loves Jodie Whittaker and has gone back and gone, and I like Peter Capaldi and the Matt Smith, and then there's all these old ones, and an uncle for Christmas goes, well, I know you've got all the new ones, but I found this in a charity shop, and it's the horror of Fang Rock or something. This will be somebody's first classic Who. And imagine it. Oh, it's such good quality, such a good story. Tom Baker is brilliant, and it's got that wonderful template I talked of characters being picked off one by one. I think so moody and atmospheric, partially because Tom Baker's a beast, partially because Paddy Russell's very good with actors and with atmosphere. Louise Jameson, all the cast help. It's a brilliant script from Terrence Dicks. And I'm overjoyed that one of the listeners on Patreon, Guy Lambert, the estimable Guy Lambert, who's worked in television himself, has confessed that he's never really got on with horror of Fang Rock, and he's now doing it properly, watching it an episode at a time and listening along to these. So if nothing else, because I don't know any 9-year-olds, but I'm satisfied that there will be one out there for whom this is their first classic Who, and what a start of an exciting journey that will be. And to be young again, but aren't they lucky? And I've been very lucky in my experience of Who as well. I count myself lucky that I witnessed so many episodes that were missing not being missing, and the excitement of that, and the excitement of the resurrection of the show and all sorts. So there's luck wherever. It's just part of the tapestry, the rich tapestry of being a Doctor Who fan, which is all about childhood changing into adulthood and all the love and loss that goes with that. It's love and loss being a Doctor Who fan. It's death and taxes. But look, I don't know. So yeah, my hope for this is that Guy comes to the end of this process with these 4 episodes and goes, do you know what? I've learned to stop worrying and love the horror of Fang Rock. And then I'll go, it's not the horror of Fang Rock, it's horror of Fang Rock. Do you see how I turned my mistake into his then? Right. Right. Well, my choice, I'm afraid, I mean, I didn't even need to think about it. It's the cliffhanger. It's one of the great Doctor Who cliffhangers. Even though I have this nagging little voice going, but it's obvious what the cliffhanger tells us is obvious from the beginning of the episode when Reuben is the walking dead man. And Harker spots him and he goes, leave me be. And then he goes up to his room and starts glowing like an alien. But it's not. And of course, then you see the alien that kills Palmerdale, which, when you think about it, you go, oh, it's crawled out of Reuben's window and gone up because it is Reuben. But that's not explicitly shown. He does glow like an alien, though. A part of me, and I remember being very annoyed about this as a kid, part of me sort of goes, why do they show him glowing? Because it's obvious. It's only obvious if you know the cliffhanger's coming. The cliffhanger. So anyway, it's not for me to judge because I go into that cliffhanger with knowledge and I still love it. So there may be some people who haven't picked up or have been, misdirected by the script and the acting and the performances, and it hasn't occurred to them. Because of course it doesn't start off being a story about an alien that disguises itself as people either. That's not our start point with this alien. It is a revelation. But anyway, whether we know it or not, I think it is a deftly executed cliffhanger, even though Tom Baker deliberately mispronounces a word because he heard Laurence Olivier do that once and thought that would be witty. I'll talk. There's a podcast I do about it, about mispronunciations. And we've all got our own, haven't we? The Logopolises, the Mandragoras. I was neither of those, but I was a crinoid. I've done a whole podcast about those where I miss out loads. I spent ages on that podcast. Then loads of people went, oh, I did this one. And I was like, well, I did that one as well. Why didn't I think of it and put it in the podcast? But I suppose that's part of what these are about, because they're essentially tedious monologues. I'm glad that there is an element where people go, oh no, I think this and can contribute that, and it provokes a conversation that is had beyond. So that justifies the nearly 40-minute solo Hadoke that you've had to endure. I guess that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. So listen, Martin Geraghty has been choosing his favourite things about horror of Fang Rock, and I think I think we've been pretty much on the same wavelength, and so I will be interested to see if he chooses the cliffhanger for episode 3, which I think is regarded as one of the best cliffhangers, even though it's telling us what most of us have picked up, because it's just such a great performance from Tom Baker, and it's a great kind of, subversion of the usual thing. Instead of going, that thing's going to get in, it's that thing's in and I've locked it in. That's great. It's a great terrible revelation. So I'm saying the cliffhanger, one of the great Doctor Who cliffhangers, that is more than a sum of its parts and actually, exceeds its limitations. One of which is that the central one of which is, I've got a sneaking suspicion it's not actually that much of a surprise, but it doesn't matter. It's bloody brilliant.
Now, episode 3. This one is all about the cliffhanger, which, in contrast to many Doctor Who stories, is just a couple of understated lines as opposed to a companion in mortal danger, the reveal of a monster, or some whopping explosion which wipes out part of a base or something. The Fourth Doctor realises his mistake in a great chilling moment that sets the scene for the final episode. I vividly remember watching this on original transmission and remember my auntie letting out a tut of exasperation that she had to wait a week to find out what happens, as obviously binge watching was an unheard of luxury in 1977.
Yes! The cliff. I get a point. Now I have to go back because there's been a slight gap. I think Martin and I are doing pretty well. Well, I'm doing pretty well at being along the same lines as Martin. So having self-sabotaged Fury from the Deep just recently, I'm not going to get my hopes up too much because it's very unusual that I triumph. In fact, I've triumphed once, come close a couple of times, but this feels like it might at least be a close one, and that's a victory of sorts. So there might be a little bit of triumph amongst the corpses next week, spoiler alert, but if you're watching on the DVD, you've seen everybody get killed already, which makes me furious. But it's such a good story, isn't it? Such a good story. Classic ingredients of classic Doctor Who for me. Brilliant. I defy anything on that week to be as good a piece of telly as this. There will be some adult dramas that you will watch from that week that are slower, that are clumsier, that don't have as uniformly good casting, that don't have, a theme within the story, subtext, things pivoting on characters that are contradictory and yet logically so, and two leading actors who are, the very pinnacle of the television professionals working at that time. Oh, Horror Fang Rock. You have this is because sometimes I do this because I have to. I've got to get stuff out there. This is what I've chosen to do, to podcast and to be positive and all of that sort of stuff. And sometimes, and it's always an enlightening experience because I'm going into it with the remit of being as positive as I possibly can. But sometimes I knew I was going to like this one. But actually, sometimes the ones I like, I've sort of rehearsed in my own head why I like them anyway. So it can be a bit of a chore sometimes, or I find it difficult to articulate. I'm not saying I haven't found this difficult to articulate, but I've certainly really been inspired and enthused and nourished by the process. It's a reminder of why I love Doctor Who. So I think this is so good. There's no tongue in my cheek as I watch this. There's no sort of lofty disdain for stuff from my childhood that now looks a little bit naff. I genuinely think this is high quality, brilliant Doctor Who, which means that it's high quality, brilliant television, a classic of its genre, a jewel in Doctor Who's crown, and yet a very humble offering. A small group of people in a small location getting picked off by a monster. I mean, that's what it is, really. But of course, when Doctor Who is on song, it takes those humble ingredients and, like a master Italian chef with just a tomato, but a damn good tomato, and some basil, but the finest basil, and some olive oil, but my God, he knows exactly how much to sprinkle and where. And you can create something layered and flavourful and sophisticated and yet deceptively simply brilliant, but that goes down a treat. Oh. Well, thank you very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Martin Geraghty, whose work you can find online and in Doctor Who magazine and on the Doctor Who animations. I'm grateful to Martin and to the patrons who make this podcast possible, and they include Thomas Gerrier, Aaron Gullius, Luke Hannington, Susan Harrison, Steve Hatcher, Duncan Harvey, Ronald Hayden, Paul Hayes, Lee Jin Henderson, Matthew Herbert, Stephen Hill, Simon Hodges, Andrew Hodson, Sam Hollingsworth, Matthew Hooliston, Darren Howard, David Hughes, Tom Hunter Watts, Paul Ingerson, Robert Jewell, Andrew Jolly, Judith Jackson, William Keith, Matthew Kilburn, Andy Kitching, Hendrik Korzeniowski, Pete Lack, Andy Larson, Paul Lindblad, Neil Little, Andrew Lester and Andrew Llewellyn. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you would like to become a patron like those people whose names you just heard read out there, then you can do so by going to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Tiers start for as little as £3 a month, and for your £3 you get early access to all of the podcasts, 6 months for Happy Times and Places, about 6 weeks to 2 months for Too Much Information, and Indefinable Magic. So indefinable, I forgot the name of my own podcast temporarily. And there's Too Much Information's sister podcast, which is Far Too Much Information, which is an exclusive for patrons. And you get most of the stuff at the lowest tier, £3. You can also sign up for a year in one go, which gets you a 10% discount, whatever tier you are on. There are little things to entice you up the tier scale, but most things are available at the lowest tier because I don't like the idea of withholding things. So it's a sort of pay what you want, really, which is the way things are going now, and I apologise for being cap in hand, but it is the way of the self-employed these days, and if you're a patron you get 3 things a week from me, so I wonder if some people are actually paying me to stop, but if so, they haven't. They've been polite. You can also go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke if you just want to do a one-off payment every now and again, if you particularly like a certain podcast, or if you think I sound especially needy, or if you've just won the lottery and want to share your largesse in metaphorical coffee form with creative people like me. So that's the Ko-fi thing. There's no monthly commitment there, but you also don't get any of the bonuses. The Patreon is a monthly commitment, but you can cancel at any time. And I know that both of those things are, financial drains. And I know that, talking of drains, the country is currently going down one. So particularly in terms of all things financial. And I know that times are tough, and all this stuff gets out there for free eventually. So, you have better things to be spending your money on. And I quite understand that. It's very, very difficult just paying for basics at the moment, as everything seems to be getting worse and costing more. But you know what costs you nothing? Going to iTunes, going to Spotify, going to Podbean, anywhere you like, and giving these 5 stars. Those 5-star ratings really help. And a few lines, say something about them. Give us a bit of an injection of positive sentences, a few glowing words, which just helps to spread the word and improve our algorithms. I say "are" as if there's a team. It's me. I'm looking at the register here on what is it called? GarageBand, going up and down, and there is no team, there is no editing skill or anything. I mean, look, there's not even an end to this sentence. It's just me with a MacBook and a microphone, and now a pop shield, because I noticed these recent episodes, I've got a pop shield on my mic, but I had belt and braces it with another pop shield, and I thought it's just getting in the way and it's too much. But I've noticed the recent episodes have been a bit poppy. So if you're a listener and you've got slightly sensitive ears and you go, I'm not comfortable with Happy Times and Places at the moment, it's a little poppy, I have now added an extra pop shield, so hopefully that will not be a problem anymore. And apologies if I can't remember quite when I took the pop shield off. It wasn't that long ago. But yeah, hopefully normal service has been resumed. Normal pop-free service. And would you like to come and see some comedy in Manchester? If so, go to Excess Malarkey Comedy Club, any Tuesday night in Manchester at the Bread Shed. We're at XS Malarkey on Twitter, and there's a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/XS Malarkey, which has got an archive of the shows we put on during the pandemic. Because I am a stand-up comic, that's what I do, really. This Doctor Who lark is a hobby that has got out of hand. But, I talk about Doctor Who online too. I'm on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. These podcasts have their own feed at Hadoke Podcasts. Oh, I'm on Instagram as well. I'm not very good at Instagram, but I'm trying to get better because they say it's the future. So I'm the only Toby Hadoke on Instagram. Well, I'm presuming I am. I mean, if there are fake ones, they presumably won't have photos of me. And if there are fake ones, I mean, they really need to have better things to do. But I don't think there are. So don't get any ideas. Okay, I think that'll do, don't you? It's getting a bit late. This one's going live to patrons. I mean, I'm literally going to switch this off and upload it to the Patreon page. So hello, everybody. It's a dark Tuesday night, the day after Halloween. I've just done a gig at XS Malarkey where I did I went off on one about licorice and blackcurrant sweets and aniseed balls and herbal. There's all those sweets that I absolutely love, but I think modern youth who cry at tweets because they've not had to eat sweets that are frankly a bit of a chore and it takes some getting used to. And I think I think I have to say I think that toughened us up a little bit and made us realise that sometimes life was a bit of compromise and sometimes things took a bit of getting used to, and sometimes even a sweet could be something you had to work at enjoying, like life. A blackcurrant and licorice sweet, I would say, is a metaphor for life. But I had a lot of fun doing it. It's nice to be in the saddle when it all goes well, and I feel it's all going well with Horror of Fang Rock as well, which is a story I very much enjoyed spoiling by talking through and over. And I hope you are too, and I hope you're well wherever you are. Where I am, the rain is falling and the darkness is closing in, but that feels kind of appropriate. Considering the story that I'm watching.